Probably don't need to introduce John tonight, but we are fortunate to have him beginning the lecture series on origins. And the conversation should and does continue today concerning origins, and we need to sift through the evidence to get a glimpse of the truth of what's going on in that. We piece together a logical flow of events as we study it, as we research these things. There's much discrepancy between the opposing thoughts. And since this is a lecture and not a debate, the evidence is going to be kind of one-sided with that, and you have to determine for yourself whether what you hear is logical, whether it is sound. You should honestly discern whether it's the truth or not. Our speaker is John Baumgardner, who has a Ph.D. in geophysics and space physics from UCLA and an MS in electrical engineering from Princeton. He served for 4 years as an Air Force officer in the laser division of the Air Force Weapons Laboratory at Kirtland Air Force Base in Albuquerque as part of the team that developed the Airborne Laser Laboratory. He later served for 20 years as a technical staff member in the Fluid Dynamics Group of the Theoretical Division at Los Alamos National Laboratory. After his retirement from Los Alamos, he collaborated with Cornell geneticist John Sanford to develop Mendel's Accountant, a state-of-the-art population genetics program for modeling the processes of mutation and natural selection. And whether he explains what that means or not is up to him. But without further ado, Dr. John Baumgardner.
Thanks, Pat. It's a real delight to be back here again. Like Pat said, I spent 20 years, some of the prime of my life, best years of my life here in Los Alamos. We raised our daughter Christina here, and for those of you who are interested, she and her husband Michael, who also grew up here, live in Colorado Springs. Michael is an attorney there, and they have 4 children now. So really rejoice that she had the opportunity to grow up here and grow up in this church, actually. So this weekend, I've agreed to do a series of lectures on the general issues of the origin and history of life, and actually the history of planet Earth. And tonight I'm beginning with a talk on something that some of you may not have given much thought to, and that is the topic of language. And I'll momentarily explain why I believe this is so significant. And then tonight and tomorrow morning, first thing, we'll be talking about neo-Darwinism or evolution, and why that whole framework can no longer, if it ever could, simply cannot be defended from a scientific standpoint. And some of the advertisement that I proposed for the banner on the bridge was why neo-Darwinism is science, is fake science. Okay, because I earnestly believe it is fake science. It's a charade. It cannot be defended. And were the public to find out just how much of a charade it is, it would tarnish the reputation of every professional scientist in the country. So it's a serious situation, and it's only being maintained because the main science professional organizations have deeply dug in their heels, deeply committed themselves to defending it to the bitter end, regardless of the opposition. So I think you'll enjoy what I have to say about neo-Darwinism. And then one of the main issues, one of the main topics I'm here to talk about is the one we'll deal with in the second lecture tomorrow morning, and that is the age of the earth. Is the earth really billions of years old? Or could it possibly be that the Bible is right and the genealogies in chapters 5 and 11 mean what they say, and that the earth is only a few thousand years old, that it's only been a few thousand years since the earth was created. Could that possibly be? And I'm going to defend the position that the answer is yes. I believe there is objective evidence that the earth indeed is very young. And then tomorrow afternoon, I've divided up into two parts, a lecture on earth history and the flood, and my conviction that the Genesis flood explains most of the surface features on the earth today, that a major part of the earth's geology is a result of that cataclysm described in Genesis chapters 6, 7, 8, and 9. And so to me, that is a extremely important issue for putting it all together. And if the flood really happened, basically it also means the earth is young. It also means that Darwinism is utterly indefensible. So that's an overview of what I'm hoping to talk about. There's a lot of technical content. Surveying the audience tonight, I knew that there were a lot of homeschool families that were very interested in what I was going to talk about. So I was trying to gauge just what level should I speak on. And as you know, I'm a professional scientist, and I'm used to working at that level. So even though a lot of my content is moderately high level, I'm going to make an effort to not use a lot of technical jargon. When I do, I'll try to define the terms, and I'll hopefully keep it at a level that most of you can track. Also, as far as questions and answers, I welcome interaction. So, but I've got a lot of material to try to get through. So I would say if you're interested in interacting, maybe afterward. We'll try to do, I'll see if I can fit some Q&A in during between the lectures, but it may turn out that if you really want to ask in-depth questions, it would work best to do it after my final talk tonight, or during the lunchtime tomorrow, or tomorrow afternoon. I'll just open up any questions right now, any issues. Okay, let me move on to this first talk, Language and the Ultimate Nature of Reality. I thought that was a little bit of an intriguing title, and I'll try to explain what I mean by, or what I have in view with this ultimate nature of reality here pretty quickly. A prominent aspect of Western intellectual life since the so-called Enlightenment has been a widespread commitment to philosophical materialism. Now, I hope most of you have some idea what philosophical materialism is, but I decided to just go online, look up the dictionary definitions of materialism, and they capture it very, very well, in my opinion. Dictionary.com, based on the Random House Dictionary, defines it as the philosophical theory that regards matter and its motions as constituting the universe, all phenomena, including those of mind, as due to material agencies. So it's a view that matter is all there is, and all phenomena are due to material agencies, including phenomena of the mind. Okay, so that's their dictionary definition. The Collins English Dictionary is the monist doctrine. Mainly, monist means there's just one kind of reality. The monist doctrine that matter is the only reality, and that the mind, the emotions, etc., are merely functions of it, of matter. the online etymology dictionary, and this is a definition they bring up from 1748, philosophy that nothing exists except matter, and that it's from the French materialisme. And then finally, the New Dictionary of Cultural Literacy gives a little more wordy definition. The position that nothing exists except matter, things can be measured or known through the senses. The things that can be measured or known through the senses. Materialists deny the existence of spirit, and they look for physical explanations for all phenomena. Thus, for example, they trace mental states to the brain or nervous system rather than to the spirit or the soul. Okay. I would say that this outlook has dominated the university world for well over 100 years, and today it's basically enforced. Other viewpoints simply are in some cases ruthlessly suppressed. Only view that's basically allowed. Now, what I want to do now is give you a couple of examples from the 20th century of individuals who were unashamed about being a materialist. The first is Carl Sagan. Here's a quote from Carl Sagan's book, Cosmos. He says, "I'm a collection of water, calcium, and organic matter called Carl Sagan. You're a collection of almost identical molecules with a different collective label. But is that all?" And his implied answer here is yes. Is there nothing in here but molecules? He's saying that's it. Some people find this idea demeaning to human dignity. For myself, I find it elevating that our universe permits evolution of molecular machines as intricate and subtle as we are. So he's not hiding his outlook. So in case some of you doubt that this is a major aspect of the way most educated people in our nation look at things, I'm giving you a couple of examples here. Another is a guy that lived a little bit before Carl Sagan, Bertrand Russell, mathematician and philosopher, noted in both areas. Here's a quote from Bertrand Russell, that man is the product of causes which had no prevision of the end they were achieving, that his origin, growth, his hopes and fears, his loves and his beliefs are but the outcome of accidental collocations of atoms, that no fire, no heroism, no intensity of thought and feeling can preserve an individual life beyond the grave, that all the labors of the ages, all the devotion, all the inspiration, all the noonday brightness of human genius are destined to extinction in the vast death of the solar system, and that the whole temple of man's achievement must inevitably be buried beneath the debris of a universe in ruins. All these things, if not quite beyond dispute, are yet so nearly certain that no philosophy which rejects them can hope to stand. Only with the scaffolding of these truths, only on the firm foundation of unyielding despair can the soul's habitation henceforth be safely built. Okay? That's from an essay from 1903, A Free Man's Worship by Bertrand Russell. So this is an expression of the way many people, at least those in the seats of power, in the intellectual centers of our country, Europe, and in most places in the world today, view themselves and other human beings and the reality around them. After more than 200 years of influence in academic circles in the West, materialists have largely been able to enforce their viewpoint and silence dissenting viewpoints in most of the educational and cultural institutions, not only in Europe and the United States, but also in many other parts of the world. So some of you may be disbelieving this. Some of you may be acutely aware of it. But I'm insisting this is the reality of things today. And so yet, is it reasonable to inquire, is materialist philosophy actually true? I believe it is reasonable to inquire whether it's really true or not. And today, tonight, I would like to draw your attention to a reality, one with which we are all familiar, that is an undeniable counterexample to materialism's foundational truth claim. That truth claim is that non-material entities simply do not exist. So I'm gonna try to persuade you, or at least share with you, that there is a reality that we're all very familiar with, we all participate in, that is I would say, indisputable counterexample to this materialist philosophy's foundational truth claim, that there is no non-material reality. Okay, so what is that reality with which we're all familiar? I'm saying it's language. Okay, language is so integral to our own mental processes that most of us rarely, if ever, pause to analyze just what is occurring when we think, write, speak, or process what we read or hear others say. It is therefore important to begin our discussion here by defining what we mean by this term, what we mean by the term language. So what is language? Now I'm going to use the definition of what linguists would usually refer to as formal language. So this is a technical definition of language, but it applies, it's essentially universal in its application. So according to this, the way I'm defining it, language involves, first of all, assignment of meaning to a set of otherwise arbitrary symbols to form a vocabulary. So we're assigning meaning to symbols. Then the second part is a set of rules by which elements from the vocabulary may be joined together to create arbitrarily complex meaning structures. Or stated more simply, language encodes meaning, utilizing a set of symbols and a set of rules. Okay, so let's look at an example of assignment of meaning to symbols. And here we're going to use sounds that humans can make. Okay, so we've got a big variety of sounds that humans can make, and we're going to assign meaning to some of those sounds. Now, so this one sound that most of us in the room are familiar with, dog, our culture has assigned a certain range of meaning to that sound, dog, so that when we hear that word, there's this association comes to mind. But not everybody in the world will make that association. In other parts of the world, they associate that meaning with other symbols, other sounds, like hund, or quien, or sobaka, or cane, or perro, or gao. So sobaka, for example, is the Russian word for dog. Gao is the Chinese for dog, and so on. So this is an example of where meaning is being assigned to an arbitrary symbol to begin to form a vocabulary. All right? Now here's an example of joining vocabulary elements or words together to form a more complex meaning structure. The guide dog led the blind girl through the city traffic. Okay, so if you've got a larger set of symbols with meaning assigned to them, then you can start building more complex meaning structures by joining these elements from the vocabulary together, linking them together, and actually there's no limit to the complexity of meaning that can be formed in that manner. Okay, so hopefully you're starting to understand what this definition of language involves. All right, but there are many kinds of language beyond human language. Certainly human language, both written and spoken language, satisfy this definition, but so does computer language. Computer language satisfies that definition. Mathematics, just mathematics itself, satisfies that definition I gave. And also genetic language equally well satisfies that definition. So now let's ask what category of reality, to what category of reality does language belong? Is it something material? Is language a material reality? Well, because meaning is abstract and non-material, if language is simply an encoding of meaning, language has to likewise be non-material. As I say here, language is merely encoded meaning. The non-materiality of language is affirmed by the fact that the meaning of a message, the meaning a message conveys does not depend on its material carrier. A message, if reliably encoded and transmitted, is the same whether it is via paper and ink, on a magnetic disc, on a plastic CD, or chiseled on a rock. What really counts is the meaning in the message. It really doesn't depend on how it's transmitted or how it's recorded. Again, a message, when reliably transmitted, is identical whether it is carried by acoustic waves through the air, and much of my voice, that's the way it's being transmitted through compressional waves through the air, whether relayed electronically, and actually part of the sound you're getting has been processed electronically and amplified, whether it's faxed, emailed, encrypted, sent through the mail on a DVD, or carried via smoke signals. The message has an identity and a reality independent of its material carrier. Okay? All right, to reiterate, language conveys meaning, language encodes meaning, language expresses meaning. The essence of language is the meaning it conveys. Because meaning is a non-material entity, so is language in its ultimate essence. So hopefully I've repeated that enough where you're getting the picture that language is something that's non-material. It's a non-material phenomenon. Now, Albert Einstein grasped this fact. He recognized that there exists a gulf logically unbridgeable between the realm of concepts and propositions, that is language, and the realm of what we see, hear, taste, and touch, that is what is physical. So he, in 1944, in an interview, he made the following statement. He said, "We have the habit of combining certain concepts and conceptual relations so definitely with certain sense experiences that we do not become conscious of the gulf, logically unbridgeable, which separates the world of sensory experiences from the world of concepts and propositions." Now, so he's basically saying he was describing two categories of reality. The category involving sensory phenomena, things we can sense, in other words, material phenomena, and a realm that involves concepts and conceptual relationships. Things that he saw were not part of the physical world. Now, today linguists refer to this gulf which Einstein described between the physical world and the realm of concepts as the Einstein Gulf. Now, to illustrate that, the Einstein Gulf that linguists talk about, I have a photo when our dog Tiffany was a puppy. A bodily thing such as a dog shown on the left exists on the opposite side of the Einstein Gulf from the meaning of the word dog used to refer to the dog. The two entities are in separate categories of reality. The meaning associated with the word is not a material dog, and the dog is not the non-material meaning associated with the word. So they're in separate categories of reality. Okay, so let's now take a quick look at the language as used in our machines. Language, as we've defined it, includes not only ordinary human languages, but also machine or computer languages. Software using machine language enables machines to perform tasks hardly imagined a century ago, or even a lot more recently than that. Software, via the meaning it carries, enables the complex electronic circuitry in computer chips to perform astonishing feats. Without software, the hardware could accomplish almost nothing useful. But enabled by software, the circuitry in our smartphones, for example, allows us to place calls to a good fraction of the world's inhabitants. It can provide detailed navigation instructions for driving in a strange city. It can, these days, recognize our speech and can search the web to provide verbal answers to our spoken questions. It has capabilities like that. Now, let me point out that downloading a new app on your smartphone does not alter the mass of your smartphone by even a single atom. It doesn't change the mass of your smartphone at all. The reason is that the software is a non-material entity. So if some of you still are having trouble imagining that language is real but nevertheless non-material, I can't come up with a much better example than the apps on your cell phone. That they don't add or subtract a single atom to its mass when you download them, and yet without them, the cell phone simply can't perform those functions. Okay, another realm of where software plays a huge role today is in the realm of industrial robots. The machine language expressed in the software of industrial robots enables these robots to fashion and assemble most of the parts required in our automobiles and many of the other machines and appliances we use. The power of this non-material encoded meaning in the robots, used by the robots to shape the material world around us, is astonishing. So we see an example of how the non-material language causes material things that didn't previously exist to happen. Our automobiles, for example. Again, most of the engine parts are produced on numerically controlled machines. The sheet metal is cut on numerically controlled machines. It's welded, it's formed on numerically controlled presses and welded by numerically controlled machines. So here's an example of a Chrysler assembly plant in Ontario, Canada, with just the factory floor is just packed solid with these robots. Another example of an assembly plant welding a vehicle body in a plant in Michigan. So again, all of this is enabled by software, which is nothing but encoded meaning. instructions for these machines to use. So language makes human society possible, and I say software makes modern human society possible. Our cities would not, as they exist today, simply could not function without all the software that's involved with the communication networks, transportation networks, utility networks, all the traffic signals, and all that goes on in a city. Much of it today is a result of machines and software. Machines controlled by software. So we see the impact of language here on the kind of material world that we live in. It plays a major role. You can't deny that it's not real and also not important. So we have mentioned human language and machine language. What about mathematics? I mentioned that earlier. Does mathematics qualify as language? I say, of course, yes. Mathematics involves assignment of meaning to sets of symbols and specification of a set of rules or axioms for manipulating the symbols. So there's a major implication of that fact, and that is that the laws of physics then are a linguistic description of the structure of the material world itself. Even though we may not find those laws encoded anywhere, we nevertheless are able to discover them and even utilize them. So what this means is that the material world itself has a substrate, seems to have a substrate, a linguistic substrate on which it is based. An example of these laws are Maxwell's equations shown here that describe electromagnetic radiation, describe light. So just a few symbols are a powerful description of how light behaves. So just as I just said, the material realm itself has linguistic underpinnings. This implies that the material realm cannot be fully explained or understood solely in terms of material entities. These linguistic attributes of the material realm cry out for an explanation. So a materialist who talks about the Big Bang and thinks he may be coming close to a grand unified theory, an explanation of everything, I say needs a little humility, because he really needs to explain the laws that govern the material realm. That you don't have a full explanation without an explanation for that non-material substrate. So, what implication do these considerations we've just looked at have for the materialist worldview? Well, the foundational truth claim, as I've mentioned, of philosophical materialism is that there are no non-material realities. Yet we have shown that language, which is encoded meaning, is indeed non-material and also quite real. Can materialist philosophy then possibly be true? And the answer is an emphatic no. Language represents an unambiguous counterexample to the assertion that matter plus energy in all its various forms is the full extent of what is real. Only one counterexample is sufficient to falsify the materialist claim. This means that materialism, which has been taught as dogma in most of the world's universities for the past century or more, is grounded on a claim that is demonstrably false. There simply is no justification for its being presented as the default viewpoint in our public educational institutions any longer. I say it's high time that the the people that are enforcing this viewpoint be challenged. One of the main organizations is the American Humanist Association. And they have got a major foothold in all the professional scientific organizations. But I say it's high time that local school boards be challenged and it be challenged everywhere possible. I believe Christians have the responsibility for standing up and pointing out the foolishness of this kind of dogmatism and the error of it all and the destructiveness of it all. Okay, getting a little back to language. Some still might be asking, can language somehow have a material cause? Well, the laws of chemistry and physics offer no clue whatever that matter can assign meaning or manipulate meaning at any level. Just where else might confirmatory evidence be discovered? It simply does not appear to exist. So I would say anybody, just where would you turn? Where in the material world would you find any evidence that matter can deal with meaning, can assign meaning or manipulate meaning? However, some have suggested that language or even intelligence might, quote unquote, emerge when matter is organized in extremely complex ways, such as in electronic networks with trillions of interconnected transistors. I remember when working at the lab back in the early 90s, we did business with Thinking Machines Corporation. They're based in Boston. They built the, what was it called? The connection machine. Some of you may remember that. And the president of the corporation believed very earnestly that intelligence was an emergent quality of matter. It was just a matter of time until we saw thinking machines, machines that could think on their own. But I would say that fad has come and gone. There are not many people still around that talk about that. And I would say there's absolutely no hint in the absence of software that any ability whatsoever in these kind of networks that exist in these kind of networks to generate meaning-bearing signals or behavior of any kind. Okay, well, what about random processes? Can they possibly generate meaning-bearing linguistic sequences? Well, here's a random sequence of 800 characters with the same letter frequencies found in typical English text, including that of the blank. I wrote 25 years ago, wrote a little program to generate sequences like this. And as you look at it, it's not surprising that the result is gibberish. And why must that be the case? Well, because the defining aspect of linguistic sequences is the assignment of meaning, and there simply is no assignment of meaning going on here in this generating these characters randomly. So language unequivocally demands a non-material explanation. The laws of physics offer no indication whatever that matter has any language generation capacity. Elementary particles, atoms, and molecules simply have no ability to assign meaning or recognize meaning-bearing symbols. Moreover, our language ability, well, I'd say by contrast, our language ability illustrates that we as humans have capacities that transcend the material. It is easy to verify that how we form and interpret language involves our capacities to think, to reason, and to make choices. This suggests strongly that our minds and our volition, with their ability to create what is non-material, namely language, are likewise non-material. So this gets back to these quotes by Carl Sagan and Bertrand Russell I started with. I believe our language ability is a strong indicator that we as humans are more than just matter, that we have demonstrable capacities to generate non-material reality. And because the cause has to be greater than the effect in all our experience, it is strong indication that there has to be a non-material component to the human being. And such conclusions should not be that surprising. The Bible teaches that God originally created man in his own image with astonishing capabilities. The Bible clearly teaches that we each have a non-material spirit and soul in addition to our present physical bodies. Our language ability ought to affirm to us that we are far more than merely accidental collocations of atoms, as materialist philosophy so earnestly would have us believe. So one takeaway of this talk is to encourage you, if you happen to be a Christian, a believer, that you are more than just matter. We live in a realm where we're blasted with that outlook from every direction. And I believe it has affected the ways that many Christians view themselves and think. But language should show us that we are vastly more than just matter, vastly more than just machines, that we truly do have a non-material component, really do have a soul and spirit, and so we don't have. It's not just a matter of faith. We have very clear evidence that we have a non-material aspect to who we are. Now, as a final topic here, I haven't been watching my watch. I guess I still have a few moments. Let me briefly explore the spectacular role that language plays in the realm of biology. Prior to the mid-20th century, no one even suspected that the genetic specifications in living organisms might be linguistic in nature. As far as I know, no one even suspected that possibility. However, with the unveiling of the structure of DNA beginning in 1953, it was discovered that what are called nucleotide bases in DNA serve as letters of a genetic language. This language specifies the structural details of living organisms, astonishingly down to the level of the individual atom. So living systems are designed so amazingly, for lack of a better word, so that every atom in our bodies is specified by the DNA. And so our bodies and that of every other organism is engineered to that minimal level, down to the level of each individual atom. And that's nanotechnology taken to the ultimate. That's the way we're able to function the way we are. What reason we can have the kind of vision we have, the kind of processing of the visual signals in real time, and all the other incredible capabilities that we have. It's because the miniaturization that's involved, the complexity of all these machines that underpin all these capabilities. And we'll get into that in the next lecture quite a bit. So this double helix structure of the DNA molecule, these links between the two backbones of this helical structure involving pairs of nucleotide bases, that's where this linguistic information is carried by the sequence of these letters, of these nucleotide bases. And this is a little section, I know it's a little small here, section of DNA showing the molecular structure of the four kinds of nucleotides. They're called, it's adenine, cytosine, guanine, and thymine. Those are the four letters that are inside the double helix. And so the DNA language has an alphabet, it has a vocabulary and a grammar. The DNA alphabet consists of four letters we just mentioned, A, T, C, and G. The vocabulary for describing proteins consists of 64 three-letter words, so it's a relatively small vocabulary for that function of DNA. And then simple grammatical rules exist for prescribing the proteins. So all the main elements of language are present there in what we find in the DNA. Here is the DNA codon dictionary for nuclear DNA. The dictionary specifies how life's 20 amino acids are specified by a vocabulary of 64 three-letter words, which are called codons. So we see that some of the amino acids, like serine, have 6 different words that all specify that one amino acid. Other amino acids only have a single word that specifies them. But and this multiple specification, I'll mention later, allows for overlapping messages within DNA. I'll mention that it's been discovered in the last 15 years that there are that the messages the complementary message on one strand, on one side of the DNA. Say you have a message on this side, the complementary strand, the complementary nucleotides on the other side also commonly have a message, a meaningful message encoded. Also, in many cases, you can read the code both forward and backward, and you get independent, meaningful messages. And in addition, in some cases, you can do a frame shift, just shift by one nucleotide and start reading the nucleotides 3 at a time, and you get an entirely different message. Just an incredible, compact way of coding it all that boggles the human mind. If we tried to write code, if humans tried to write code like that with the assistance of computers, it'd bring our biggest computers to their knees immediately. It boggles the mind to imagine an intelligence that could possibly do that. Anyway, that's the main point of one of the parts of my next talk. To appreciate the astonishing power of the genetic language to specify the structure of living organisms, it's helpful to have a glimpse at what all life is like at the molecular level. And I've already mentioned it involves these nanoscale machines, but many of these have mobile or have moving parts. And this is one little animation of a biped motor protein known as kinesin walking along a tubule. That circular part is simply the vesicle it's carrying. The machine itself is just what's underneath that circle. And that consists of a single protein. It acts as a little tractor, if you will, to move components from one part of the cell to the other. And there are tens of thousands or more of these in each of our cells. So this is just a little introduction. I'll go into it more fully in the next talk of the amazing technology that exists at the molecular level in living systems. Okay, so this is another view of that same thing, except it's not animated, same kinesin motor protein. And this shows the microtubule network in monkey liver cells. Those microtubules are stained red here. Cell nuclei are stained blue. But you see how dense this network is inside the cell on which these little robots move and carry things around. So this is just a whet your appetite for what I'll talk about a little more in the next talk. And so the detailed specifications for all these proteins, for all these machines, are encoded in the organism's DNA. And that then gets translated, copied into messenger RNA that goes through another machine and actually manufactures the proteins. So in conclusion here, language which is encoded meaning is a familiar and indisputable example of non-material reality. As such, language demonstrates that philosophical materialism is nonsense, simply is not true. Human language capacity argues that humans possess an array of non-material attributes, including mind, will, emotions, self-awareness, moral discernment, among others. So language reveals that we are amazing creations of God. Finally, genetic language, whose source lies outside the human realm, language that provides specifications for all life at the atomic level, in my view, is irrefutable evidence for God's reality. Objective evidence that a super intelligence is behind the life forms around us. So I believe this is a very important, this understanding language is very important for Christians to understand as far as our apologetic to a world that has been deeply deceived. And I might mention that this talk is largely taken from an article I co-authored with Jeremy Lyon, published in 2015, entitled A Linguistic Argument for God's Existence. There are a few copies, I think, out there on the book table, but you can download it yourself from the Answers in Genesis website or from my website, globalflood.org. So thank you for your attention, and I will, before I begin the next talk, let me just ask, do we need to take a little break, or are y'all ready to go for the next talk? Anybody need to take a break? Let me take a couple of minutes for any quick questions anybody might have. Any questions?
Well, John, I really like the idea that you could apply all this to music.
Yes?
You really could. You take a score of music, and I'm talking about music that's truly grandiose in the Western canon. And there's a notation down there that has very specific instructions to the French horn player and all the other instruments and the violinist. And then something like the Ninth by Beethoven, you have language coming in a godly way, which, and it's German, saying something that's really transcendent. And it shows that this naturalism, materialism, it's nonsense. That was more of a comment. But I do have one question. Are you familiar with Tom Wolfe's book where he was showing the problems, I guess it's philology is having? They had this one guru that had this idea that language developed over evolutionary eons. And he didn't end the book very well, but they found a couple tribes that totally blew that up. And so that particular science is now in total disarray.
I have that book on my desk at home. I haven't read it yet.
Yeah, well, but you won't like the ending, but it showed, you know, Darwin was a bit of a fraud too. He stole the ideas from other people for his evolution. You know. Okay.
Thank you.